Okay, so basically, I want to put some light on something that I feel like isn't enough about in the community. So, yeah, basically, I want to sort of talk about uh, Transformers and Transformers in relation to MTH trains because there is a lot, and I also feel like with it being the holiday season, it's a time where a lot of people are buying trains, and it can be a little bit confusing because I went through a lot of research and a lot of looking back during the spring when it didn't really matter. But uh, with it being the holiday season, you don't want to have to do a lot of long research before you buy something, especially because they have different cells and sellers and stuff like that. And it would be a shame if you got something for the holiday season that didn't even work because it's something that's not talked about enough. So basically, what I'm talking about is certain MTH trains not working with certain transformers. Now, that might seem like a shock, but that actually is a thing. Not all O-gauge transformers will work with MTH trains. Now, this doesn't really apply too much with the newer MTH stuff. This is more so towards the earlier stuff. This right here is a Protosound 1, not even Protosound 2. Protosound 1 locomotive. It's New York Central Dreyfus Hudson. Uh, and basically before I bought the locomotive, or when I did buy the this locomotive off of eBay, at that time I didn't have a transformer, and I just thought, all O gauge transformers will work with all O gauge trains. And during that time, I thought I would get the Lionel CW80 because if you ask pretty much anyone in the community, uh, what's a good O gauge transformer, pretty much they're always gonna say, "Oh, just get the Lionel CW80, CW80." That is a good transformer, but it's also not because Lionel CW80 transformer and a lot more modern transformers are chopped sine wave. And what that basically means is some trains don't take well to chop sine waves, other trains need pure sine wave. And the thing is, all pure sine wave trains need a pure sine wave transformer. And if the transformer is not pure sine wave, uh, the train won't react well to it. It'll jitter a lot. You won't be able to move, and there'll just be a lot of things surrounding it. Now, if there's a train and it came with a chopped sine wave transformer, you can use a pure sine wave transformer to run that train, if that makes sense. Now, you're probably thinking, what would be a good transformer that is pure sine wave? That is a good question. Now, when I was doing this research, a lot what came up was, I forgot the name of it, but it was a big MTH transformer that cost like $600. And you can kind of guess why $600 wouldn't exactly be in my price range, and probably wouldn't be for a lot of people's price range, especially if they're just trying to get in to going outside the box of getting trains that don't come from a starter set, because most starter set trains will come with a remote of some kind, like a Lionel remote. I know it's kind of hard to see, but this is the remote that comes with most Lionel sets, and modern MTH sets have their own remote, I believe, that comes with. And while the remotes are good, and it is good to have that wireless control, and you can control each train individually. If you want to start to get into trains outside of that company or that brand that makes it, it can be a little bit hard because there is no universal controller for all O gauge trains across the board. And that is where transformer comes in. It doesn't matter whether or not if you have an uh, an MTH train, as I have here. I have an MTH train on line out O gauge track using a whole completely different transformer. And that is kind of the whole thing of why it's good to have a transformer, is because it allows for that cross compatibility. And that's something that you don't get when these starter sets with only the remotes. And yeah. So the question is still, what would be a good transformer for earlier MTH trains, such as this one that came out in the late 90s, early 2000s? Well, the answer to that would be I'd recommend the Pure Power AC transformer. Now, as you can probably hear within the name, it is pure power, which means pure sine wave, which is pretty good because it'll be compatible with this, and it is pretty affordable. You can find it for about I think $150. I paid like $140 because I got an eBay offer when I bought it, but it is really good, and it does have a lot more wattage than a lot of starter set transformers. I forgot what the wattage is, but it's about 100 something, which is more than the CW80 and even starter set MTH transformers, which is another thing I want to get into real quick, is MTH transformers, like the normal one, like the Z controller, uh, isn't pure sine wave, which means you can't use it on some of these earlier Protosound 1 locomotives. Now, this isn't necessarily the case all the time with Protosound 2 locomotives. I hear with that one it's a little bit more iffy, but if you're able to get a Protosound locomotive with uh, with the instructions in it, because it has a list of compatible transformers, uh, that is pretty good. But I also would say is to take that list with a grain of salt, because a lot of these transformers, or a lot of these engines, are from the late 90s, early 2000s. Some transformers that are compatible won't be on that list, like the transformer I'm using, but it still is compatible, because the only thing that determines the compatibility is whether or not it is pure sine wave. And I just thought I would bring that up because there's literally no information on that on YouTube whatsoever. And the only way I was able to figure this out was by me going on some Gauge forums. And a lot of these forum threads are like 12, 13 years old. They're from like 2008, 9, and it's them talking about it. So a lot of them are outdated, might have some outdated information, or the thread is locked. And even if it wasn't locked and you try to say something on it, not a lot of people would respond due to it being old. So yeah, that is kind of basically what this whole video is about. Kind of, I guess, your warning, in air quotes. So if you're thinking about getting an earlier MTH Protosound engine this holiday season, make sure you have a compatible transformer, because your line out CW80, from what I've gathered, will not work with it. Z controller is mainly, it won't work, but I know some people have been able to make it work. But I would just recommend uh just finding a pure sine wave transformer. And a lot of post-war Lionel transformers from from my knowledge and the research I did, are compatibles, such as like the RW transformer. So if you are, able to find like an older line L transformer that's been serviced, you can also use that too. So that's basically it for this video. I don't know when I'm gonna post again, but yeah, that's it. Enjoy your model railroading.